Hi everyone, here's the book once again, and today I'm reviewing Love and Treasure by Ayelet Waldman, which is my first Waldman novel. The only other fiction by her I'd read so far was a story in McSweeney's Enchanted Chamber of Astonishing stories, which is an awesome collection. If you don't know about it, do check it out, with a cast of all-stars writers writing amazing horror fiction, and Waldman's story was one of the best in the collection because it was impossibly creepy. It's about a mother who loses her child and starts experiencing weird shit. But what about Love and Treasure, which is a completely different kind of story? Is it good? Does it suck? Sto cazzo! And if you're not Italian, I'll have to explain the concept of sto cazzo with a 10-minute book review, so brace yourself. First things first, Waldman is the wife of my favorite writer, Michael Chabon, and I first found out about her that way, so let's address the issue. Is their fiction similar? Do they write the same kind of book? I wouldn't necessarily say so. I mean, I think they edit each other's works, but Waldman has a clear voice and a clear style, and it's not necessarily similar to Chabon's. Really, the biggest similarity I saw in this book is that it is set in World War II and it deals with surrealist painting and surrealist art of the 30s and 40s in a way that, of course, Cavalier and Clay, Chabon's most famous novel, also did, and that's really a marginal similarity. So yeah, there's really no need to compare her fiction to anybody's, really. The novel itself is one hell of a roller coaster, and I don't want to tell you too much about it in order not to spoil it, not to spoil the fun for you, and I never do that, but in this case in particular I'll have to be very careful, and you'll understand why as you read the book. What I can tell you is that the novel is set in several different locations throughout Europe and the Middle East and America and throughout the 20th century and beyond, and it touches in particular upon two major events in 20th century history, which are the Holocaust and the birth of Israel. The novel, especially in its first and second part of its three parts, features some amazing reflections on these major historical moments, and while the author shows extreme empathy and sympathy toward these people who were involved in this major tragedy as the Holocaust and in this problematic chaotic moment as, the birth of Israel and Israeli history with its history of conflicts and of, wars. At the same time, the author isn't afraid to make a few political points, isn't afraid to state that, for instance, some people took advantage of the Holocaust for their own scopes and aims, and that certain people and of course Israel has done some evil shit in the course of the 20th century, basically. And that's great also, and most notably, because I wouldn't say that this is a political novel at all, even though the author, as I said, makes a few political claims or makes a few statements here and there. It is in fact a romance, it's a love story, it's an exploration of the impact of love on people's lives, especially in extreme situation and extreme historical moments. As a love story, this book is, oh my god, it's so sad, it's terribly heartbreaking, and it's, it will stop your heart, but it's never bitter, and that's great. It's never bitter in its reflection upon love, at least not for more than a paragraph or two at a time. I said this novel is a roller coaster. That is because it is divided, as mentioned, in three parts, which are very different from one another. And, this shift that happens twice in the book from a narrative perspective and from a specific setting and characters to a completely different world is kind of disorienting, and I'm sure that different readers are bound to prefer one of the three parts to the others, or two of them to the last one, because they are so different. And I'm not going to talk at all about the second and third part. I'll let you discover them by yourself, but the first part is set in Salzburg in Austria, in the aftermath of World War II, and it evokes that time beautifully. The historical reflections and the historical, the way Waldman paints the city, this scenery and this landscape in such a peculiar moment in which it was hard to understand for, the American soldiers there and for those people who had actually fought World War II. It was hard to understand whether they now were allies, were they still enemies. It was a huge mess, and of course the people who suffered were the same people who had suffered in the past 5 years. It's great. The way she paints that time, it's amazing. Add to that the plot of that first part and its characters are amazing, and you'll understand why I was a bit disappointed when the narrative shifted to the second part and let that first world aside. It was hard for me to, you know, adapt to this second part, which is still great. It's still a great self-conclusive part. That's also important. Each of these 3 parts is in a way a novella of its own. And the second part also features an amazing scene of a painting theft, which is possibly the best painting theft scene I've ever read. So first part amazing, second part quite good, the third part is unbelievable. The third part of this novel, if I were to consider it a standalone novella, as I mentioned, I could do that. It's the best novella I've read in recent years. It's really unbelievably great, and it has an amazing voice. It's impossibly well written and fun, and it's heartbreaking, and it paints an awesome picture of a European city in the early 20th century. I'm not going to tell you which city. All of these parts are interconnected and, you know, dialogue with each other in beautiful ways. And there are all these references and things that are mentioned in the first part. You find them again under an entirely different light in the third part. There's such a beautiful web of connections in this novel, but yeah, the third part is solid gold. Between the third part and the astonishing epilogue, this book ends on an incredibly strong note. At the end of the day, I mean, it was amazing. So yeah, Sfogazzo. It's a very good novel. It's everything book should be. It's an amazingly rewarding story. It's actually 3 very rewarding stories, and there is some beautiful reflection in its epilogue, but throughout the book on loss, be it the loss of dear ones, the loss of love, the loss of an homeland, all kinds of loss. And again, at the same time, it manages to feel, in its way, uplifting rather than depressing. That's it. Adding anything more would, you know, would only spoil the review, which is probably already too long, because as Depeche Mode said, words can only do harm. Enjoy the silence.